Welcome to MOOC course on Abhidhamma. This module focuses on comprehensive analysis of style and methodology of the Kathāvatthuppakaraṇa. The objective is to understand the Buddha's dialectical method of discourse, and second objective is to understand the nature, style and methodology of the text Kathāvatthuppakaraṇa. The beginning of the age of arguments, which is spread over the whole millennium between 500 BCE to 1000 CE, was marked by the emergence of the 6 systems of the Vedic philosophy and onslaught of various heterodox systems, that is Charvak, Ajivak, Jainism and Buddhism. However, logic developed in India out of the two distinct traditions. First one is Vad tradition, a tradition of debate concerned with dialectical tricks, arguments and sophistry. The second is Praman tradition, which was related to the criteria of empirical knowledge. Because of this genesis, Indian logic embedded an epistemological character which was never removed throughout its history. The Vad tradition does not merely subside in sophistry and tricks, it affects and enriches the other tradition concerned with the epistemology, providing a critique of diverse schools of philosophy. Vad leads to real or actual knowledge which would culminate in salvation. However, Praman is invariably linked to both Vad and Darshan. Buddha's dialectical method of discourse is to be studied here. So, now we are going to discuss the Buddha's dialectical method of discourse. So, likewise, it endeavors to retain all the philosophic truth and previous thinkers had grafted on theosophies and the results of the soul theories, while rejecting those theosophies themselves. The following are the reasons given by the Buddha for rejecting old theories. All those spectaculars about the soul, either in past or the future, do not have sufficient evidence. They see only one side of the doctrine or sealed. Such kinds of soul speculations do not lead to Nibbana. Such theories are derived from hopes and feelings and the sensation arising from transient phenomena. Moreover, these theories belong to the realm of hastily formed empirical opinion, but not the higher wisdom that is called Panya. Compared with the pre-Buddhistic methodology, Buddhists hold a position somewhat similar to the current agnostic position. Secondly, while acknowledging the importance of feeling and intellect, it stresses the regulations and the cultivation of the will. Thirdly, it distinguishes between lower and higher wisdom. The Buddha developed a unique method of resolving contradictions. It seems that he was often criticized for accepting opposite standpoints. He is reported to have remarked that he has propounded the doctrines which are one-sided and the doctrines which are many-sided. The Buddha proclaims that he is not an Ekantavadin but a Vibhajyavadin. Through Vibhajyavad, Buddha presented his analytical method. Vibhajyavad consisted of division, classification, qualified negations or qualified affirmation. The analysis is to be made by way of questioning. Such part of a theory to be discussed with acceptance or rejection, each one of a fair ground. The Buddha classified all the philosophical questions into 4 categories by his analytical method. These are: first, answerable in positive or negative terms, answerable by division and analysis, answerable by putting counter questions, and to be answered by silence or to be set aside. This was as per his philosophy of avoiding extremes, the Madhyam Patipada, that is the middle path. The two aspects of any theory can be emerged and they may form two extremes. The word Anekamshikha was probably another name for Anekant. The way Buddha applied the technique of Vibhajavad in his discourse led to the development of Anekantvad. He not only resented an alternate worldview, but he also encouraged argument, precept and discussion. Before his enlightenment, he had met many philosophers and thinkers of his time. His enlightenment quest is termed the noble quest, Arya Pariyesana, in Pali Tipitak. During his restless wandering and search for knowledge, the Buddha met Alar Kalam and Uddak Ramputra, Sanjay Belatti Putra, Puran Kashyap, Makhali Gosal and Ajit Kes Kambal, and these were Buddha's contemporaries. Pakud Kachan was a humpbacked philosopher belonging to the Ajivak sect in the 5th century BCE. These philosophers have been raising questions on prevailing norms. The Buddha rejected their views and ideas. He is reported to have described Makhali Gosal, an exponent of Ajivak sect, as a burden on the earth, a person responsible for leading people astray. He also launched a crusade against the hypocrisy of the priestly class. Rather than launching a protest movement, the Buddha kept all the doors open for debate and discussion. The Buddha and his followers developed a specific method of indulging in discussion. It had been termed as delivering a discourse by way of asking question, Patipuch Katha. The genre of Dhamma Katha, discussion of Dhamma, was cultivated and practiced with the advent of the Buddha. The basic tenet of the theory of Katha also evolved the Buddha's discourse on the Dhamma. For instance, we see that Kathāvatthu mentions Anuyog, that is inquiry, Aharan, that is illustration, Patiya, that is propositional, Upanaya, that is application of reason, and Nigama, that is conclusion, and Niga, that is the capture or defeat, as a various technique of Katha. However, we see that Thermogaliputtatis has not referenced any specific work on logic in the text Kathāvatthuppakaraṇa, though he has mentioned some technical terms that is mentioned above, which are Anuyog, Aharan, Patiya, etc., warrant us to be presuppose the science of logic in India during the 3rd century BCE. The teaching of not self have always been regarded as a central doctrine of the Buddha. The characteristic method used by the Buddhist to break down the false idea or self, that is Sakkaya Ditthi, used analysis. We see in early Buddhism, the primary method was to systematically determine those things taken to be the self, hold them for investigation and find on scrutiny that do not possess the features be ascribed to a self. Thus, The five aggregates are described as the basis for forming self theories. However, on reflection, they are seen to lead to affliction, which is not how a self is conceived. So, they fail to fulfill the criteria of a self. In the suttas, this method was exemplified by the disciple Kaccāyan. He was known as the foremost of those able persons to analyze in detail what the Buddha taught in brief. This analysis or vibhanga was gathering momentum during the period of the Third Council. However, Vibhajyavad represent the Abhidhamma movement as an analytical approach to Dhamma in general and a critique of the self in particular. It would also seem appropriate to describe the Buddha as a Vibhajyavadin, equivalent to saying he was an Anattavadin. However, the word Vibhajyavadin signifies both an epithet for the Buddha and the name of the school whose members considered themselves to preserve the undistorted teachings of the Buddha.